In the heart of winter, the village of Hemlock's End, perched precariously on the Canadian border, was smothered by a relentless snowfall. This was no ordinary winter. The snow seemed to fall with a purpose, blanketing the village in silence and isolation, as if nature itself wished to conceal Hemlock's End from the rest of the world. The villagers, accustomed to the harsh winters of the north, found themselves unprepared for the psychological tempest this snowfall would bring. Among them was Alice, a writer seeking solace and inspiration in the seclusion of Hemlock's End. The quaint village, with its snow-laden pines and frost-kissed windows, appeared to be the perfect retreat from the cacophony of the city. However, as the snow continued to fall, day after day, without a hint of respite, Alice's sanctuary began to feel more like a prison. The snowfall brought with it a silence so profound it seemed almost sentient. The usual sounds of wildlife and wind were muffled under the thickening blanket of white, leaving only the sound of Alice's own breath and the occasional creaking of the old cabin. But soon, even those sounds were joined by something else, a whisper. At first, Alice thought the isolation was fraying the edges of her sanity. The whispers seemed to emanate from the very snow itself, soft and indistinct, a language she felt on the cusp of understanding yet remained frustratingly beyond her grasp. As days merged into nights and the snow continued to pile higher, the whispers grew more persistent, more coherent. They spoke of forgotten things, of shadows buried beneath the snow and ice, of a darkness that hungered for the warmth of human souls. Alice tried to dismiss them as figments of her imagination, but the whispers were insidious, weaving their way into her thoughts, distorting her dreams into nightmares that left her gasping for air. The villagers, too, felt the weight of the snow's oppression. Incidents of paranoia and madness began to surface, tales of shadows moving in the storm, of loved ones disappearing into the night, their tracks swallowed by the snow. The village, once a tight-knit community, began to fracture, suspicion poisoning the air as thickly as the cold. Alice, in a desperate attempt to understand the source of the whispers, delved into the village's history. She uncovered tales of an ancient darkness that dwelled in the land, a malevolent force that was quelled by the ancestors of Hemlock's End and buried deep beneath the earth. But the relentless snowfall, it seemed, had awakened it once more. The realization came too late. As the snowfall in Hemlock's End grew heavier, an ancient darkness stirred beneath the frozen landscape, manifesting as ominous shadows that roamed the village under the cover of the blizzard. These shadows were not mere absences of light, they were entities, born of a malevolence as old as the land itself. They moved with purpose, deliberate and silent, save for the faint whispers that preceded their arrival, a sinister herald of doom. The villagers, already isolated by the relentless snow, found themselves facing a terror that defied logic and reason. The shadows appeared without warning, often at the edges of one's vision, a fleeting glimpse of darkness that chilled the soul. But as the nights grew longer and the snow continued to fall, these apparitions became bolder, more corporeal, and undeniably predatory. People began to disappear, taken from their homes in the dead of night. At first, their absences were attributed to the storm, perhaps lost in an attempt to seek help or find salvation from the endless snow. However, it soon became clear that something far more sinister was at play. The homes of the missing were found undisturbed, their doors locked from the inside, with no tracks leading away, only the impressions of unnatural forms in the snow, a mocking signature of the darkness. The shadows, it seemed, were not indiscriminate in their haunting. They sought out those whose fear and despair resonated the loudest, preying on the vulnerability of the isolated villagers. These entities were not just hunters, they were harbingers of madness, their whispers seeping into the minds of their prey, eroding the fabric of reality until nothing remained but terror and the overwhelming urge to flee into the storm. Alice, in her investigation, discovered accounts of these shadows in the village's ancient lore. They were described as the guardians of the darkness buried beneath Hemlock's End, entities that fed on fear and suffering to sustain the malevolent force that slumbered in the earth. The ancestors of the village had once known rituals to keep the darkness at bay, to bind the shadows to the land and silence their whispers. But these practices had been forgotten, lost to time, leaving the current inhabitants defenseless against the encroaching night. As the situation grew dire, the village itself seemed to succumb to the influence of the shadows. Buildings and landmarks, once familiar, now appeared distorted, as if the very landscape was being reshaped by the darkness. The snow, relentless in its fall, became a canvas for the shadows to weave their terror, each flake a whisper, each drift a tune. In her final hours, as the darkness crept towards her door, Alice understood the true horror of Hemlock's End. The snow was not a prison, but a tomb, a purgatory for those caught in the grip of the ancient darkness. The whispers in the snow were not warnings, but laments, the voices of those who had fallen before, now bound to the very force they sought to escape. As the cabin door buckled under an unseen force, Alice penned her last words, a warning to any who might find themselves in Hemlock's End, ensnared by the whispering snow. Her final thoughts were not of fear, but of resignation, as she accepted her place among the voices in the snow, another whisper lost in the endless winter of Hemlock's End. The snowfall continued, oblivious to the darkness it concealed, a relentless, whispering shroud that waited patiently for the next soul to wander into the forgotten village on the Canadian border. That's it. Thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to say whether you liked it or not in the comments.